You right there guys, this is Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft, and today we're going over my current guns I own. Going to have a little showcase of them. Going to be talking about why I've kept on with them, why I don't plan on selling them, what they do for me, how they fill in a space in my current loadout. Obviously these are not going to be full reviews. I have done that before with all the guns that we're going to talk about today, so if you want to see an actual in-depth review of them, I'll put the links for those in the description down below. This is more of a showcase, just explaining why I've hung on to these for so long and why I don't have any plans for selling them in the future. And so with that in mind, on we go. So the first gun we're going to talk about today is my ASP UK Enhanced Tokyo Marui VSR 10. Now, sniping is always my go-to when I go up to a site, and even if I've been there for the first time or not, I'll almost always run the sniper if I can. Sniping is just my default setting really when I go airsofting. I get a lot more enjoyment out of placing that one perfect hit on a guy than I would with, say, just hosing down a bush they're hiding in with an AEG and hoping for the best. You don't quite beat the feeling in my eyes of just seeing the BB through the scope just go out, arc up and then land the perfect hit on a guy, and that feeling is only matched by the feeling of frustration you get when that perfectly timed shot is deflected by a twig of destiny at the very last second. So why have I stuck with the Tokyo Marui VSR 10 out of all the sniper rifles I've owned in the past? And there have been a fair few. Even when you consider that I did actually own a JG Barton, which is a knockoff basically of the VSR in the past, and that was also enhanced by the ASP UK team. The reason I tend to stick with this one is just the Tokyo Marui build quality, honestly. It's top notch, you can't beat it. Yes, the JG did very similar to what this rifle is doing, but you could just tell the drop in quality was there, and with the VSR you've got a lot less reliability related problems. Compared to other things like the Striker I had in the past, I love the form factor of that gun, but God, it was unreliable. And similar sort of things with the Dragunovs I've owned in the past. I had a problem with those where the straight pull bolt would actually crush a BB in the mechanism, which wasn't particularly great. And even though I do love the high caps of the Dragunov and the straight pull bolt, meaning the quick follow-up shots, I do prefer the overall shorter length and more manageable weight of the VSR, and also the mags are smaller and more readily available in case you lose one. They don't rattle around when you're jogging about the place as well, which would maybe give you a position away as a sniper. So the ASP UK upgrade package on this really did the rifle a good service. When I first got it, it could really only shoot 30 meters because, yeah, it's the legendary VSR, but it's also a Japanese gun and they have much lower FPS requirements over there than we do over here, so it just didn't have the power in it. But once we got the gold upgrade package in, it is shooting absolutely brilliantly. I am still getting a tiny problem with this in the occasional double feed, especially when I've got a very full mag that I've just put in. And that's because one of the things that wasn't upgraded was the catch spring in here. When you've got like a horseshoe clip and it feeds the BB in, there's a tiny little spring behind that that's the original one, and it's starting to show its age a little bit. So it will occasionally let a second BB into the chamber because it doesn't return quite as fast. It's not got as much tension behind it. But it's not a mega problem. It's not a mega problem, all things considered. You just rack the slide and put another one down range, and so it doesn't really hurt the performance overall. So I don't ever see myself replacing this gun due to performance needs. Even if in the future I do get another airsoft sniper rifle, I'll probably still hang on to this one and keep it in reserve, just in case the new one's a bit temperamental and I still need some sniping footage. So I can't see myself getting rid of this gun anytime soon. So how I run this gun is actually very simple in the airsoft field. One excellent thing about the JG Barton I mentioned previously was the included scope, which this is. And I've hanged on to this for years and years and years, and it's lasted me brilliantly. That was one of the better things about that JG package. The scope was included, which the vast majority of airsoft rifles don't do. When you consider the fact that the JG was stupidly cheap as well, like the entire package was cheaper than most aftermarket scopes for these things. And it does the job perfectly. If I want it, I can light it up in red or green. It's got excellent zoom magnification. The eye relief is fine. It just really does the job, honestly. And that's why I ended up hanging on to the scope, even though I sold the gun that came with it. Obviously, I have my camera set up on this thing as well. Just a little clamp on here with the Runcam 2 with like the FNKY Airsoft Sniper setup I got like 2-3 years ago. The classic duct taped on BB shield up front. This is obviously something I had to have myself because I've had cameras shot at before in the past. I had a Contour Roam 2 years and years ago, and the lens was shot out in the jail. So to avoid that, I've just literally got one of those little BB protector shields you get for the red dot sights, the flip up one. and just took the plastic out and just shaved the thing down until it was a small little circle and just duct tape it on the front. And it's a good thing I did, because if you notice, there is a good old crack in that, which the shield actually saved my camera lens from receiving, which would have been much more damaging. The reason I'm keeping the crack lens still in is because A, it's already damaged, and so if it was to take another strike, no big loss to me. If I'd have got another one that damaged that, but also where the crack is, it doesn't actually affect the video quality. Like, the camera is actually looking past the crack, so as far as I'm concerned, it's still doing a decent job. When I run this, I'll tend to have about 3 or 4 of the magazines, the low cap 20-30 rounders on my person. I'll also run a speed loader at the same time, because it's highly unlikely during one life in any one particular game I will run through all 4 mags. When I get shot or the game's over or I need to head back to the respawn point, I'll then take my time to use the speed loader to top up the mags. But it also means that if I, for some reason, do manage to survive long enough and put enough rounds down range to empty the 4 mags, I've still got that speed loader on hand to top it all up. So, next up, what we've got is the ASG Scorpion Evo Carbine. This is the BET version with the integrated mock suppressor. Now, if I get bored with my VSR 10, or I feel I've got enough sniping footage for the day, or maybe I just want to mix up my playstyle, this is the gun I'll usually default to. Main reason, AEG, but also the fact that it's got a really, really good fire rate. I love the form factor of this thing. It's just so light, easily, comfortably shoulderable, good place for your hand, and it's got the M-LOK system on it, so if I ever wanted to, I could customise the hell out of this thing. Did have teething problems when I first got it, absolutely, but once we got those solved, this has easily become my favourite AEG of all time. Those problems were power related. When I first got it, yes, the FPS wasn't particularly great. It was about 300, 320, but as the games went on, that dropped to 280, and then the lowest was like 260. And this wasn't a one-off fluke, because a friend of mine recently bought not the BET one, but the same length carbine, and he had the exact same problems I did. So definitely a problem with the Evo carbine line. But once we got them all fixed and ASP UK upped the power and looked at the air seal and solved it, favourite AEG of all time, hands down. Aside from the positives I've already mentioned, my favourite bit has to be the trigger response. I will, even though this does have full auto and 3-round burst, I will almost exclusively run this on semi-auto all day, just because for ammo conservation purposes, not wanting to overkill on a target, but also because if I need to, I can fire this on semi quicker than most guns can on full auto. The trigger response is that good. In fact, the only time you'll ever see me flick this onto full auto is if there's a particularly thick shrub in the way, or more often, if I suspect there's someone not taking their hits, I'll just flick it on full auto so I can send a bit of a stronger message to them to see if they take the hint rather than having to get a marshal involved with it. But not a flawless gun out of the box, as mentioned with the power problems. But overall, yeah, I absolutely love this gun, and I am not getting rid of it. Now that it's fixed and it is running brilliantly, my favourite AEG of all time, I'm keeping this one indefinitely. How I tend to run it is I often do actually put on the sniper scope that I have for the VSR 10. The main reason for that is A, it's got the scope cam already attached to it, so I can actually add the additional footage, so that means that you guys, when I'm doing the AEG gameplay, you can actually see where my shots are going, which is big from a video making perspective. But it is actually quite useful to have the scope itself on, even on an AEG. Yes, it adds a bit of weight and bulk to the gun, but because you've got the magnification, you can actually see where your shots are landing. Yes, it's nowhere near as accurate as the VSR 10 will be, but the ability to see exactly where your shots are going means that you can quickly adjust your aim to put them right onto where you actually need the shots to go. It's also good for scouting purposes, because often when I just run a red dot or no sights whatsoever, you'll sometimes in a woodland see something that you're not quite sure if it's a player or not. And just having a magnified scope means you can just look at it up close and say, oh no, that's just a very convincing tree or rock. So definitely running the sniper scope on it is a useful thing to do. I'll often just have 2 high caps on me vest when I'm running this, because in most games I'm running it on semi, so I don't actually burn through them. Even on the longer form games, just 2 high cap mags of this will get me through a game quite easily. And what I love about these high caps is the fact that it's got this little ridge on the front and it comes quite nicely up to the mag roll. It's just a very confirming place for your offhand. So I've never actually felt the need to mount like a vertical or angled foregrip under this thing. That does me just fine. So yeah, problems when I first got it, but now that those problems are fixed, this is easily one of my favourite AEGs I've ever owned. So now we move on to the other AEG that I own, the Tokyo Marui G3 SAS High Cycle. Is it as good as my old P90 High Cycle? Not 100% convinced. But I have held on to this gun for one very, very good reason, and that is because it is the single most reliable airsoft gun I have ever owned. This thing just works all the time. I've never had any problems with it. Feeding, mag, gearbox, no problems whatsoever. I know full well that if I get this out of the box and slot the battery in, it is just going to work 100% of the time. So even if I have zero intentions of using this on a game day, it comes with me at all times anyway. Just because if my other kit goes down for any reason, say the sniper camera's run out of battery, or I'm out of ammo, or I've got mechanical problems, I know full well I can get this out and it will do the job and I can carry on enjoying the rest of the airsoft day. It is an exceptionally easy gun to live with as well. The battery compartment is absolutely huge, so I can put a very chunky LiPo in there, so I never have to worry about power problems. The magazine capacity is large as well, so 1 or 2 mags will see me through a game, maybe even 2. The rate of fire is nothing to write home about. It's good, don't get me wrong, I mean it's still a high cycle gun, but it's not as good as the old P90. Better than most average AEGs out there, but still nothing special, and is really kind of let down by how spongy the trigger is. So using this on semi is nowhere, it's tiers below what the Scorpion Evo comes out with. So it's not as fun to use on the semi, but the full auto is fine. It's serviceable, it does the job. You'll easily send more than enough rounds downrange to actually get the job done. So very serviceable. I'll tend to keep this on hand as well for CQB games. The Evo is a touch too long for going about indoors, and I can take the suppressor that I've got on this off and reduce the stock down, so I can make this a decent CQB package. How I tend to run it then is, as mentioned, with this suppressor on front. The gearbox is actually surprisingly quiet, considering how much work is going on there, so it's not just for looks and the fact that I hated the look of the standard supplied flash hider. This does actually do some work to muffling the noise that comes out the front of it, and because the gearbox is quiet, yeah, it kind of actually does its job as a suppressor somewhat. I will very rarely run this with a red dot or scope though. Yes, in the direst of circumstances, if I don't have enough game footage, I can put the sniper scope on this thing to get the scope cam footage, but it just looks weird. Like, it's a big scope for what is a relatively small gun, and it just looks very odd. And I can't really get a decent place on this rail mount for the red dot to go. Because of these 2 clamps here that are securing the red dot to the top of it, it interrupts this bit of the rail here. So the red dots are actually a bit too long to actually get in between this space, and so it kind of hangs off the front. So more often than not, I'll just run this thing with naked sights. The irons are fine for me. No problems at all with running that. Also the foregrip up front, it's not the most comfortable thing to hold with your offhand because the mag's a bit too square and the rail's not comfortable to hold. I mean, they never are. So just the foregrip there suits me just fine. But yeah, this isn't a particularly special gun in any situation really. It's good, but the main reason I keep it, as stated, is it is super, super, super reliable, and that is the one reason I'm never getting rid of it. I just know it'll work. It is the workhorse for me. If something else breaks, I pick this up. So now we move on to what is quite easily the least battle effective gun that I own, but also conversely one of the funnest. The Fabarm STF-12 Tri-Shot Spring Shotgun. The main reason I keep this around is often when I go to places there's a pistol or shotgun only game that I want to take part in. These often happen at big weekender events such as NAE. You'll sometimes find CQB sites that run pistol shotgun only days, and I always make a point of going to these when I can, just because I like how it mixes up the airsoft formula. Because you're essentially forcing everybody to run low cap mags and less rate of fire, it allows people to be able to take risks, because there's less chance that if they just dive out of cover they're going to get hosed down in a hail of BBs, and even if they do get shot, they're going to be shot by a whole lot less BBs, so it hurts less, which means that they've got more of an incentive to take those risks, and I just find they're fun. You're able to actually run about the place and get the flank on people, and people take risks, which is what you don't often get in a lot of airsoft games because everybody's afraid of the guy with the HPA tank. But that explains why I keep a shotgun around. It doesn't explain why I keep this one around. And the main reason for that is I think this is the best value for money package you can buy out there and is top of its class. Yes, you can buy like the big TM electric auto shotguns and the metal gas powered shotguns as well, but they go for way more money than this does. This is a cheap Springer, but it actually feels better build quality above what its price range is. And being real, with the gas guns, you'll be putting out the exact same rate of fire with this as you would with a gas shotgun, so it's got basically the same performance. And with the electric ones, you're kind of taking the fun out of owning a shotgun, which is of course working the pump grip. It's also a very good performance package. As I mentioned, it's a spring tri-shot, but I was surprised by how far and how tight the spread of BBs goes. It'll get you up to 30 meters easy, which for a cheap Springer shotgun is way more than I think anyone would ever ask for it. So you can actually use this in games, and I have done this. I've gone into a regular airsoft game in the woodlands when everyone's running long-range sniper rifles and full auto AEGs with just this shotgun, and it's still done me good because it's just a good little package. Yes, this comes out for the CQB sights. How I tend to run it is with as many shells as I can fit in my pockets and a speed loader or two for topping them up when I inevitably go back to the dead zone. Expect to die a lot when you're using a tri-shot shotgun, but the fun value kind of outweighs that for me. It's not a perfect package though. Yes, I said the build quality is good for its class, but that doesn't mean it's top quality. Like, this is no VFC gun here. It's plastic, and you can notice that in a couple of places. The main places of those is the plastic top rail and the split plastic pump grip at the bottom, which again has a plastic rail on the bottom. Never, ever put a vertical foregrip on this rail under here, because what will happen is you'll snap the rail or you'll pull apart the pump grip action. So don't do that. Often when I'm in the game as well, I'll run this completely naked. Like, I like the little glow iron sights you've got on there. It's a shotgun, so you don't need a sniper scope. Like, why would you need magnification on this thing? You can see out to 30 meters fairly good. The only times I will ever run anything is this laser light combo here. If it's in a particularly dark building, like dark and CQB areas, then I'll run that, and it's just quite nice to put onto the grip. It also helps when I'm filming in dark games to have a light source, because otherwise the camera footage is basically useless. So having that bright torch on the front is actually really good in the CQB sights. So yes, this isn't the absolute best tri-shot shotgun you can get on the market, but for its price point, it's unbeatable. Like, it's not a perfect gun. The build quality could get better, but you will not get better for the money you pay this for, and so this is why I love this particular package. So those are the airsoft guns that I currently own and fill the gaps in my loadout, but there is some notable exceptions, definitely one, maybe a second, in terms of the range of airsoft guns that I have and could use for certain situations. The main thing I'm currently missing at the moment is a pistol. I actually sold on my ASG P09 at the last NAE, and I've not really seen anything that's caught my attention since. I have been eyeing up the Tokamui Mark 23, because that is the quintessential sniper backup pistol, just because it's so goddamn quiet. Like, even just stood 5 meters away from that thing, you'll struggle to hear the little click of the mechanism because there's no sound coming out the front of it. So that is quite appealing. The problem with that for me though is that when I do go to these big events, and something that I'm seeing more often that I really enjoy are the timed pistol CQB challenge range things, like the 3-gun events or just a simple shooting range. And for that, that's when I really enjoy using a pistol the most. And for that you need a quick trigger, and a non-blowback pistol with a very spongy trigger is going to be utter garbage for those things. So I really want something that I can use for those more than I do in games, because being honest, I don't tend to use pistols in games that much. More often, if I'm running the sniper rifle and I need a backup, I'll bring a small AEG, because you can just absolutely max out the rate of fire and your huge capacity as opposed to a pistol. Sure, it's a bit bulky and you have to run around everywhere with one hand on it or on it a sling, but being able to just whip out an AEG to surprise someone who thought they could surprise the guy with the sniper rifle is worth it every time. Also, running a pistol in a game, I usually have it on a drop leg holster, and I'm very conscious that it's there. When I'm running through places, I can feel it hitting against my hip, like catching on things. And the amount of spare mags I've lost in woodlands over the years is nuts. So it just puts me off running a pistol in games in general. So ideally I want something that can have a very good trigger response and potentially takes extended mags, but I often use it for these CQB courses. But I really don't like the look of race guns. Like the ones with rails everywhere and too many cutouts on it and the bloody potato masher on the front. Really not a fan of them. And as I say, I've not really been able to see something that's caught my eye and been able to fit that very specific niche that I need in my loadout. But if you guys have any suggestions, I'll be very, very happy to hear them and look into them. The second, more questionable gap in my loadout is I don't have a dedicated CQB gun. Yes, the G3 does kind of fill that role somewhat, but it doesn't do it perfectly. It is a touch too long, it's a touch too weighty, the trigger response isn't good. So I'll take the G3 out because I have no better option, but I would love a dedicated CQB gun, ideally something very small, compact, like a micro SMG of some kind. It just really makes me wish that the select fire on my old TMP90 high cycle, the semi-auto, that worked. I really wish it did. I also wish the WE SMG8 just worked in general, because that would have been perfect, but yeah, I've not had a good history with WE guns and reliability. But again, if you've got any suggestions for that, like a little compact CQB package, good trigger response, it doesn't even matter if it's electric or gas, I will have a look into either because that's something that I would really quite enjoy. So that is an overview of my current airsoft loadout, why I've got the guns I have, what roles they fill, and a couple of the ones that I think are missing. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion video. If you've got any comments, like maybe you think I'm missing out on something that I really need in my loadout or need to experience, leave it in the comment section down below. And again, if you want to see the full reviews of the guns I've talked about, those links will be in the description as well. And until next time then, this has been Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft.